pretty hard to understand PageSpeed insights and related components. Any advice? Okay, yeah, so PageSpeed Insight does sometimes give you these sort of, I guess, vague problems about your website. They might just say, eliminate render blocking CSS or eliminate render blocking JavaScript, and then it kind of gives you some hints on what that means, but it never really gives you a clear guideline on okay, go and fix this. So I would say the first thing to do is to definitely read what PageSpeed Insights gives you as information about those things. Then go back and look at your code and see if you can pick out any parts of your code that sort of match with what they've described. For example, if you have render blocking CSS, that means that you have components in your CSS that are preventing your entire page from rendering. So you need to go and look at what particular CSS script is the one that's causing this render blocking. You can kind of do that by taking them out one at a time, or you can come up with some cleverer ways to do that. Do you have any insights on the best way to interpret and use PageSpeed Insights, Durant?
I mean, yeah, that's great advice, John. If you ever have a question about something, you can also Google for the exact phrase, and you'll probably find a wealth of extra pages on minimizing the critical rendering path, in addition to what you learned in the course. So that never hurts in case you're extra curious. But a lot of times, hopefully, it does refer to new terminology that you learned in the course. But when it doesn't, certainly just go look it up and see if it's applicable. Learn a new thing here or there.
Can we load different images with different compression levels while using different devices with different screen resolutions?
It sounds like somebody's taken responsive images and wants to really optimize this.
The answer to that is absolutely yes, you can. So it's a little trickier. You'll have to utilize CSS to serve the appropriate images as opposed to hard coding them in your HTML. You can also do it with JavaScript, but I prefer using CSS to render those kinds of images. And then while using different devices with different screen resolution, yeah, you're going to have to look into using media queries for that kind of stuff and serving your images with media queries in CSS. In terms of actually, creating all these different images for all these different devices and different screen resolutions, if you haven't looked at the responsive images course yet, you totally should. Cameron breaks down how to use task runners like Grunt, for example, to automate all this, and you don't have to sit there and tweak a bunch of images by hand in some photo editor, hoping that they're rendered correctly. Different events on the page that change the render tree would cause a new layout event each time. We could increase our speed supposedly by using batch updates, according to the video. Yeah, so Liam, what this means is the render, we can create these JavaScript events that basically manipulate our DOM or our render tree. And the more times we sort of call those events, the more times we're, re-accessing the DOM, changing something, and then redrawing the tree, basically creating a new layout event each time. What they mean by batch updates is you want to create basically a function or some sort of methods that do as much of this as possible without accessing the DOM multiple times. A good way to do this is when you access the DOM elements, you actually put those in a variable and then you manipulate that variable. And that way you only call the document object model once, and then you make all the changes you want, and then all the updates happen, and then the layout event happens. Because every time you call you take a request from the DOM, it has to process all those changes that have been made previously. And so you'll actually notice this in the pizza page. For example, with the moving pizzas in the background, pay close attention to how many times you're actually accessing your document object model, because it's a lot. And if you can reduce the number of times that query selector is selecting everything, the faster your page is going to load. You'll be amazed at how much faster too. It literally goes from a couple seconds to a couple like milliseconds.
Do we not care about frames per second for page loading?
Yes, so the thing is, there are two fixes that you have to do in your main.js file. If you had read the comments, Cameron has given you that there are two fixes to do in main.js, and they are completely pertaining how you scroll through the page and how the pizza sizes changes and how the background pizzas move around in the page. So whenever you scroll up and down, you can see the background pizzas moving. So that is one area where there is a major fix to be carried out. So for this project and for this particular solution, we are only looking for scrolling over the page, up and down the page, and then resizing the pizzas. So yeah, just you should only like worry about that. Don't be too concerned about page loading.